We here at New River in Red Wing, Minnesota just had our No Limits meeting for ministry to people over 60, and I would like to invite you to come next month. We meet the first Friday of the month. My name is Rose Kendall, and I'm known as the old lady with the pink hair. And along with my husband, Dave, I'd like to give a shout out to some of you who don't get out as much as you like to, but you're still members or friends of our group. Hi, Pam and Ellen, and Betty and Little Orphan Annie, and Winton and the gang at his house. Put on the coffee pot and be looking for my husband and me to drop by. And if I didn't mention your name, then write me a note or a reply and I'll add you to my list. Last month, February 19th, I had a birthday and I turned 72. So far, this is the oldest I've been. Actually, hubby and I just realized that the country is being run by our classmates. In fact, I know I'm getting older because my husband doesn't even care where I'm going as long as he doesn't have to go with me. When I tell people how old I am, they were telling me either I'm living on borrowed time or these are bonus years and I better make the best of them. And they believe that we're each given 70 years by God. Well, where do they get that? Well, Psalm 90 verse 10 says, "The length of our days is 70 years, or 80 if we have the strength. Yet their span is but trouble and sorrow, for they pass quickly and we fly away." But let us look at that for a moment. Do you know who wrote Psalm 90? Well, the title of the psalm, even in the original document, says, "A Prayer of Moses, the Man of God." And he also wrote Psalm 92, and some people think that those two psalms may have been just one big one. But why would he write two of them, and who were they for? Well, his only congregation were those Israelites who crossed the Red Sea and left Egypt and then traveled through the wilderness. Well, they weren't there, not really. They didn't live there. It says in Deuteronomy 1:2, it was an 11-day trip. But God circled them around the long way and trained them for 2 years. Then in Deuteronomy 2:14, we find out that they wandered 38 years more because of their unbelief. So the oldest among them only lived to be 70 or 80 years old. The book of Numbers said they circled around that desert waiting for 603,550 people to die. That's over 15,000 people a year, 41 people a day. Can you imagine what it would have been like to conduct all those funerals? No wonder the Bible actually says that the wilderness was littered with body parts. It says, who were they who heard and rebelled? Were they not all those Moses led out of Egypt? And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the desert? But that word bodies there actually says body parts. And to whom did God swear that they would never enter into his rest because of their unbelief? Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still remains, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we also have had the gospel preached to us, just as they did, but the message they heard was of no value to them, because those who heard it did not combine it with faith. So the wilderness became a cemetery. Not only that, but it says the years they spent there without purpose or hope were filled with trouble and sorrow. And something else I noticed in Psalm 90 in verse 15, affliction and evil. So far, those 70 years aren't looking so good. However, we know those 70 years belong to a certain population. People who were disobedient to authority, people who didn't believe what God offered. They were whiners and complainers, it says. They fret, they worried, they were anxious, they got stressed out, they were never happy. And the fact is, Chapter 90 of Psalms even tells us those 70 years were just a snap of the fingers when compared to what God lives. We have to teach ourselves. We need to look at the big picture. So out in the wilderness then, you've got old men, and the oldest probably would have been Moses because he was 80. And then you have these men of war, anybody over 20. Then there were women and all their children. Now it says in the book of Numbers that they were numbered at Mount Sinai, and that's how we know how many died young, at 70 or 80. So all those who started out under the age of 20, for 40 years, they're watching while Grandma and Grandpa died, Mom and Dad died, their older siblings died, and they had to bury them under the hot sun in the desert and walk away. In fact, Numbers 25:9 says 24,000 died in a single day from the plague. And yet, even though everyone around them was getting sick and dying and getting old, they kept the faith in God that this didn't have to happen to them. So in Numbers 26, on the plains of Moab, now that the unbelieving discontents were all gone, this new census was 607,000 men. Now, I don't know about you, but when everyone around me is negative, I have to be real deliberate about keeping my attention on what God is doing. You could compare it to, watching the news. People think our country's going down the toilet. If things are getting worse and worse, the church is going to be destroyed, good people are dying. I don't know about you, but I have to limit my time watching the news because I get carried away and yell at the TV set. So Moses wrote Psalm 91 to go along with Psalm 90. Now, Psalm 90 describes complaining, whining, disobedient God who tested God and ended up dead and dismembered by the age of 70 or even 80. Psalm 91 was written to a passionate, God-loving generation who had to watch all this happen around them. And they needed encouragement. They needed to know how to keep their eye on the prize, which was the rest. And that rest, Hebrews tells us, is being in faith in God. They needed faith not in just a promise, not in heaven, not even in the Bible. Our faith is in God and who he has proven himself to be. And so we have to learn to habitually go to God about everything and then do what he says. Now look at verse 16. Here's what we get. God said, with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Now that salvation meant preservation, rescue, deliverance, freedom, prosperity, fullness, victory. Not only that, but even when everyone around us is going crazy, they're worried about the economy, they're afraid we're going to war, they don't trust the government. These things don't need to make us afraid. Read Psalm 91. Really look at it. You want to know why we don't have to be afraid? We don't have to worry about the outcome because verse 4 says, his truth will be your shield and buckler. You know what a shield and a buckler are, don't you? Oh, sure you do. Actually, the buckler is just a little shield. But what it means is they were completely wrapped around and held. Now, the connotation of the word truth here is what's interesting to me. When, lots of people claim to be telling the truth. You can hear it on television or read it on the internet. But this is talking about God's truth. So it has with it the idea of reliability, certainty, dependability. And that's because we go to God for safety, even in difficult circumstances, because God rules and God cares and can be absolutely depended on despite appearances to the contrary. So his truth is like a shield and buckler. So they wrap us up and keep us completely and just completely safe. And no one can get past God without his permission. Now, how does this happen? Well, my mother trusted God and she died. I know some very wonderful people who love God with all their hearts, and yet they are struggling with poor health, financial issues. I thought God was supposed to protect me from all that stuff and give me deliverance and prosperity. Well, first, there's something that bothers me about people who think they have a handle on God. What does it really mean to trust him and not be afraid? See, God can't be predicted. And the truth is he can't be tamed, and he can't be put in a predictable box. That's what makes it so exciting to belong to him and trust him with our outcomes. That's what the Bible calls rest. Psalm 91 is not a guarantee that we will never suffer. It's not even a guarantee that we won't get hurt. Now, how do we know this? Well, the devil quoted these same scriptures in Matthew 4:6. This is a passage where Jesus is being tempted in the wilderness by the devil. And here the devil quoted Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12, and he said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written in Psalm 91, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. What was he doing? He was using Scripture to tempt Jesus with pride and presumption to show off his power with God and taking credit for something miraculous so that the glory went from the Father to himself, and still count on deliverance just because the Bible says so. Now, Psalm 91, starting with verse 9, tells us why God surrounds us, why he pulls us close, why he can be trusted, why it's an honor to bear contempt or criticism or exclusion because we trust God in troubled times, why our losses actually make us rich. It's because when Jesus is my first love, like it says in verse 14, I have set my love on him. My life is satisfying no matter what. And because I am content, nothing can harm me. Now we're going to meet at the church again on March 3rd at 11:30, and I'll join you here on YouTube right afterwards.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh.
This will be every month.
Did I turn you off?
Hi, I'm Pastor John, and Rose and her group of No Limit 60 Plus meet every month, the first Friday of every month from 11:30 to 1. And they do have a meal, so we ask you to call in. But if you can't make it, every month we'll be doing this video blog for you so that you can watch it at home. Our next meeting is April 7th at 11:30. We hope to see you there. And thank you for joining us. Bye.